and welcome back to In Conversation With, the podcast series from the team behind the Global Cosmetics newsfeed. Today we're turning our attention to Gen Z, a generation whose digital fluency, spending power and uncompromising expectations are redefining the global beauty market. Born between 1996 and 2012, Gen Z consumers are among the most informed, connected, and demanding audience in today's marketplace. The significant spending power and an average attention span of just 8 seconds, they are transforming how beauty products are discovered, evaluated, and purchased. This influence extends far beyond social media trends. Growing fatigue with extreme viral looks is leading young consumers to adopt simpler, pared-down routines. Product recommendations are also moving away from public feeds and into trusted private conversations on platforms such as WhatsApp. These changes are creating a more considered approach to beauty purchasing. Affordability remains a priority, but price alone is not enough. Gen Z consumers also expect proof of efficacy, ingredient transparency, and authentic brand values, often placing them ahead of hype and celebrity endorsements. For startups and established brands alike, the challenge is to respond to these expectations while building meaningful connections with an audience that is reshaping beauty, social commerce, and brand loyalty. So how can the cosmetics industry engage Gen Z in a way that is predictive, protective, and planet positive? That's what we'll be exploring today. I am delighted to be joined by Mallory Huron, Director of Beauty and Wellness at Future Snoops, bringing extensive insight into emerging consumer behaviour, cultural shifts, and trends shaping the future of beauty and wellness, and Florence Roghe, founder of Collateral Projects and an NPD Beauty Specialist, offering extensive expertise in product development, innovation, translating challenging consumer expectations into commercially relevant beauty products. Welcome back, both to you, and thank you for joining me today. Let's begin by looking more closely at the consumer. Gen Z's beauty choices are shaped by a complex mix of price, performance, identity, and personal values. These consumers are highly informed, value-conscious, and quick to question brands that fail to meet their expectations. Mallory, from your perspective, what are the biggest consumer trends shaping Gen Z's relationship with beauty in 2026?
I run into this quite frequently where people I speak to are slightly confused where the edges are between millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha. So Gen Z we're defining as between 1997 and 2012. This means that the youngest Gen Zs are 14 and the oldest are 29. So basically, half of the generation is out of college and into the working world. So I think that's important to remember. Gen Z are no longer children. They're teenagers at the youngest end of the generational spectrum, and most of them have graduated college and are entering the working space. As a consumer, Gen Z, really from a trend perspective, they're quite a contradiction. They are a generation that both is extremely passionate about sustainability and extremely judgmental and quick to come down very hard on brands who do not live up to sustainable expectations, but they also love fast fashion and micro trends that they will adopt for a couple days and drop the next. They love overconsumerism. They love authenticity, but they are also the FOMO generation who wants to participate for the sake of participating in viral challenges. They are big into mental health, but there's also quite a lot of toxic beauty standard discourse going on right now. So Gen Z is a generation that really is just full of contradictions. And I think that's something that's thrown a lot of industries and trying to figure out a good way to approach them because they're not this monolithic, very predictable generation the way like Gen X, baby boomers, even millennials are. So that's something that we discuss all the time from the trend space. In terms of beauty, when I think about Gen Z, I think about the generation that is flipping the product over and looking at the back, the ingredient list first and foremost. That is a very Gen Z behavior to not only flip the product over, look at the ingredients, scan the back, take a picture of the product, feed it to AI. From that AI, you go into TikTok and watch a few reviews and you make a judgment of whether it's good or bad and whether you're going to buy the product within just a couple of minutes. So they are so tapped in, they are so tuned into the social media beauty review framework. They know how to use technology to analyze a product. They can look up the INCI list in 2 seconds, and they're very discerning. They are very concerned with getting products that are good and that perform. So that's definitely something that we see in that generation a lot. They're also the generation that loves the microtrend and aesthetic movement. I mean, they essentially created so many of the aesthetic phenomenons we now take for granted today, like cottagecore, the clean girl movement, so many others, could go on and on. But they're extremely creative and curious about different aesthetics, whether they're referencing history or vintage moments of beauty. They are very creative in creating mood boards and creating a feel. They love to really fully commit themselves to a new beauty aesthetic. And with that, as always, if you're diving into a new beauty aesthetic, you need all the new products to create that aesthetic. So they're very driven in that way. They're the FOMO generation, the microtrend generation, but they're also a generation in terms of being a beauty consumer that's pioneered a more simple approach. I think millennials walked so Gen Z could run in this space in terms of that kind of simplicity. They also love skincare first. They're all about getting that glazed, super clean skincare look, and they're all about maxing. This is something we talk about all the time with Gen Z. They're constantly beauty maxing, hair maxing. They're constantly trying to optimize every facet of their beauty external appearance. There's so much to be said about Gen Z as a beauty consumer, and that could just be a whole podcast in and of itself. But I think top line things that come to mind is that they are a generation of contradictions. As a beauty consumer, they're a very socially and digitally connected and socially influenced consumer in terms of if they go on TikTok and someone is saying a product is bad, they're less likely to buy it. Or conversely, if they see a product is good or someone is promoting a product, they're very interested in buying it. But they also do have that kind of minimalist aesthetic where they'll have that one colorful, highly scented, tactile, sensorial, maybe jelly lip gloss that they keep on a keychain, and that's their standard go-to product. So it's definitely interesting to speak of from a consumer culture perspective.
And Florence, how are these changing expectations influencing the product development process?
I think, as we've just said now, Gen Z is no longer a passive beauty consumer. It's an active participant. They research, they compare, they validate, they engage more they want to make it their own. So they're going to fully engage into the beauty journey. So there's a starting point with education. Obviously, they have this unlimited access to information. I think this is what we were just saying earlier, that they're born with that connection and therefore unlimited access to this information. They can find research about ingredients, research about a brand, and really dig deep into what they're looking for from a product perspective. They're also very well educated from a product perspective, which is what I find fascinating, specifically on different categories, but they are looking for the information and the education. So I think taking an example as the fragrance segment, which has been so far a very closed door category within beauty. You were talking to nose, you were using a very specific vocabulary from a product development perspective. You find out that this generation knows everything that is very technical. And I'm talking from a technical aspect of product development. They will understand everything about fragrance on a very specific level. So what I'm trying to say here is education, looking for the information online. Social media is not just entertaining them. It's really a platform where they're going to find information from and try to understand a product or a new category of products before purchasing. So I think it's really looking at, like we said, the ingredient, the efficacy, and the performance, very specific. And I find it fascinating. Community is also another element that is very important for this generation. They will want to be part of it. It's important to be part of a community's influence. It's important to exchange on recommendation, on reviews, on experience. They love experimentation and they love experiences. So it's important for them to look out, but also amongst themselves. That's also part of the fascination about this generation, is that they're going to want to understand from other of their own community and own age group how they feel about a product, what is their experience about their product. So it's not just a community around the brand, it's also the community that you have on social media, and it's also the community among their peers. I think it's really important as well. And that will help them into the validation process onto why they will buy into a product or a brand. So they will really question, does the product perform? Can I trust it? Is someone recommending it? Does it fit into my lifestyle? We talked about authenticity for sure. They will want to find the brand credibility, authentic messages, sustainability. All of these points are extremely important and part of their purchasing decision making. Another also element which I think is really important is anything about self-expression and individuality. Beauty, especially from a beauty perspective, it's part of your extension of identity. You're going to look at a way to define who you are, to have this more personalization around your beauty. It's all about having and making sure that the brand offers the tools as well in order for them to express themselves. It's just a moving kind of journey and transition. It's not fixed. It's an evolution, and they want to be part of this evolution and be part of building this product, this beauty product evolution. So it's, like I said, back to the original, let's say, observation. It's a very active participant in that beauty journey.
Of course, it isn't possible to discuss Gen Z without considering the role of technology. Social media, artificial intelligence, virtual try-on tools, personalised recommendations, and social commerce are changing every stage of beauty's journey, from internal discovery to final purchase. Mallory, how is technology changing the way Gen Z consumers discover, evaluate, and interact with beauty brands?
It's changed everything about the product exposure to purchase pipeline. And I think the pandemic did a lot with live shopping and e-commerce strategies to accelerate that. We saw countries like China pre-pandemic already had a strong live shopping culture and infrastructure in place. But during the pandemic, everyone was following that model from Instagram live shopping. Of course, TikTok live and TikTok shop is now a behemoth of selling, especially K-beauty, but selling beauty products. Really this idea of trying to connect something engaging, what was just being discussed about how Gen Z is very discerning. They're very curious about learning about products. They trust these influencers, not implicitly, but they do. If there's an influencer they like, they gain this kind of sense of trust with their recommendations for beauty products. And so they're more likely to make an impulse buy based on something that influencer might recommend. User-generated content is a staple of this generation because it's seen as more authentic as opposed to just promoting a product in a very simplistic way. There's a perception of authenticity, but I think technology, AI, obviously, if anyone saw a few months ago when it was college graduation season in the US at least, there were several viral videos of graduation speakers celebrating the possibilities of AI and the Gen Z graduates in the crowd booing. And it's very interesting. This is another area where Gen Z is a bundle of contradictions because on one hand, they can see some of the potential problems with AI, but they very much embrace AI in terms of asking ChatGPT. That has become a huge search engine and not just what product should I buy, but this is my hair type. What kind of routine should I use? And of course, generative learning models will also, in addition to giving you routine recommendations, they will give you product recommendations and links, and they'll personalize it for you and ask you, what products are you currently using? And so it's all become connected in this incredibly enmeshed web of content and information, as was just being discussed, more information than any of us could know what to do with in 10 lifetimes. The overload of information is insane. Even just talking about beauty, information about beauty products and the beauty industry and how products are made. So there's an incredible amount of beauty information available online. And overlaid over that is an infrastructure of live shopping that has become so seamless that sometimes, I don't know if either of you have experienced this, sometimes, especially on a mobile phone, you can almost accidentally buy something just by clicking the wrong link. Because with Apple Pay and with built-in connections to existing forms of payment, it is so easy. And so the barrier to purchase has effectively been removed. Soon we're going to enter an era where you can buy something just by blinking your eyes, because it's just the way that our methods of payment are connected to the content that we just naturally consume is just become so linked. And it's something that this generation is definitely dealing with, because we're all subject to impulse purchases. And how sociologically, what does that do when you have an influencer on your phone, which is a mini computer that is selling you a product that you want, and TikTok Shop gives you a coupon, as it often does. A coupon will pop up in a video, and then just with 2 taps of your Apple Pay, you've already bought that product and it's on its way to you. So I think technology has definitely made it possible for the kind of overconsumption machine to really kick into high gear. But technology, I want to add a quick flip side. Technology is also where Gen Z does a lot of wonderful community organizing and knowledge sharing. We can talk about how overwhelming the mass of information that's available online is, but that's also been a very good thing, because consumers are more educated than they are now than they ever were before. 30 years ago, if you asked your average consumer, your average 18-year-old consumer in a drugstore or a high street store, what's your opinion on this product? What goes into it? Like pointing out this ingredient on the ingredient list. What do you think about that? They would say, I don't know. This is my moisturizer. I buy it because I like it. If you ask your average 18, 19, 20-year-old in a drugstore or high street store today, they'll say, oh yeah, I like this product and this brand because they do this, that, and Z. I support their ethics. There's also this influencer who I love on TikTok, and she loves this product and it really helped my skin. And actually, this ingredient I learned is really good at doing this. They just know so much more, and it's because of the incredible knowledge sharing power of social media. So for all its ills, it actually has created a much more confident consumer in that regard. Of course, the proverbial 19-year-old in my analogy is not a cosmetic chemist herself, and there's much about creating products that is very much still a science. However, the fact that they understand even a fragment of it is a testament to the knowledge-sharing power of social media, I think.
And Florence, thinking about that, what role can technology play in developing your personalized, effective, and relevant beauty products for this audience?
I think, as we discussed, the technology has just simply changed products or brands, and it has changed how A, consumer learns, and B, how they buy. Technology is really so fast that from, again, a product development, we have to consider this element from the get-go, because this Gen Z generation is just fully engaged, and they want to be in control of their engagement with the beauty products that they're buying into, or the beauty brands that they're following. So yeah, they are looking for more information availability. They're learning really fast, and those AI tools or any other technology tools will enable them to have access to this information. And I think it's this enabling that is really strong and powerful, because they want to own it. So it is important that brands consider that element from the get-go and almost give that kind of power of co-creation and personalization in every single way of the brand and the product journey. recommendation will become increasingly tailored, bespoke. This is what it needs to remain. There's still a human, we talked about those contradictions within this generation, and it's true that there is still an element of human side that needs to be part of this technology journey. And I think it just because beauty still remain very an emotional journey. So whilst there is that information, recommendation, we talked about product routine, there's still that immersion into that beauty and brand that is a lot more emotional. And there is an emotional side of this generation that wants to feel as well, and therefore be engaged with the brands and the products. So I think it's all about having the right balance in that technology and / giving that human side of it. The role of online creators is indeed really important in that process as well, because they will influence. They will be able to give even more information. And again, when you think about influencers or creators that are online, they're human. And this generation really look after these kind of engagement as well. So I think it's, as just mentioned, it's this balance between these online recommendation from human that have tested, compare product, explain product, discuss performance, that will just help them making some informed decision. And then having that more AI, let's say a little bit more super high tech kind of information as well, that will give more system information, and then they can compare and make their own choice. I think it's all about the choice and their engagement here in choosing the brand and the beauty products that they will use. Definitely. So it's empowerment. It gives them the engagement and the empowerment to make their choice.
So these changing behaviours are also influencing the products Gen Z consumers choose. While this audience remains highly responsive to innovation, affordability is one of the most important considerations when building a beauty routine. With 92% using discount codes, value must be central to any brand strategy targeting this market. Mallory, which product categories, formats, and routines are currently most strongly with Gen Z consumers?
I think for Gen Z, the really key category is skincare. So I'll start with that. There are a few others that I'll touch on, but skincare is definitely the major category at the forefront of Gen Z's mind. This is the generation that brought the whole clean girl aesthetic into the popular conscious. They're very much a generation that's interested in generating as much of quote unquote natural state of beauty ideal, and then choosing to add color cosmetics and styling on top of that if they so choose. But they're really interested in trying to do this whole sort of high maintenance to be low maintenance. That's sort of a big TikTok trend of all these tweakments and all the routines and rituals that they go through so that makeup essentially becomes optional rather than necessary. So skincare is huge. This is a generation that's very interested in barrier repair, still grappling with a bit of acne as well, acne care, and also very into skin longevity and preventative aging. Of course, much has been said about Gen Z's relationship with toxic beauty standards and an overuse of certain cosmetic procedures. So I think that there's still things that generation is grappling with, but from a product standpoint, definitely very into facial level skincare. Hair is also huge. Again, very much in keeping with that idea of generate the result you want through a product so that it cuts down on how much styling you have to do. The same concept applies to hair. They love hair growth, TikTok, length retention. This is the generation that really is into bond building and hair health. Hair health journeys is huge on social media with this generation. Gen Z is all about trying to preserve their hair and take care of their hair as much as possible. Also because this is a generation that loves to experiment. So product-wise with hair care, anything that has to do with hair health and keeping your hair in as good of a condition as possible is going to give you that canvas to be able to experiment with styles and color. And so they're very invested in their hair health. It's driving a huge amount of innovation from drugstore, high street, all the way to prestige and luxury brands. So I think definitely skincare and hair care are the first two that come to mind, but don't dismiss color, cosmetics, and nails. These are really the product categories that really open up that experimentation for Gen Zs. Nail art has been a huge focus of creativity that we've seen on social media, and color cosmetics as well. Even though, as I said, with the skincare portion, this is the generation that pioneered that clean girl aesthetic. They also love to experiment. There's a reason why Euphoria and that whole show was such a groundswell for defining this modern Gen Z look with a ton of glitter and really wild Y2K and various historical referencing aesthetics. And so I think definitely skincare, hair care are key, but also it's hard to pinpoint which are the most resonant product categories because they're a generation that's so into optimizing every facet of their beauty experience. We could talk about body care as well as being big, but definitely skincare and hair care are the top two that come to mind.
And Florence, how are affordability, efficacy, and ingredient transparency changing the NPD process?
There is an element, again, it's linked back to the information. We want to make sure that from an NPD process, all the full journey of the beauty journey for the Gen Z is very transparent. So it's all about having the information available and having this transparency and making sure, again, they are part of this engagement and we listen to what they are looking for. I think from a product perspective, we're moving to more of a product ecosystem with immersive products. So it needs to resonate throughout each of the categories. If you have multiple categories, obviously, they really are building rituals. We see more of that layering, about that experiment into an overall brand, that you will use different formats. And so therefore the brand from a product perspective needs to have that silver thread throughout each of their categories and throughout the product information and the build-up of the formulation, the packaging, the clear storytelling, but a clear message that needs to be authentic, credible. That's what they're looking for throughout the whole product process. So not just something nice on the ingredients. It needs to be super transparent and traceable from the ingredient perspective to the packaging. As we said earlier, they are very aware of sustainability, very aware of the ingredients. I think these loads of categories are moving on to full-on development. As Mallory just mentioned, hair care is booming because you have multiple extensive products that will resonate any hair type, any scalp health. So there is an element of going deep into having almost a personalized hair care routine as well as skincare. I think one of the booming segments that is pretty much moving forward as well with that level of personalization and importance is fragrance. And fragrance can resonate throughout fragrance as parfum, but as well as fragrance as layering in different product format. From body mist, we've seen so many body mists, but it still is that kind of hero format that works really well. But it's all about layering through other product formats. And from a product perspective, brands are working hard on making sure that they will offer the different product sensoriality alongside product fragrances, alongside the different discovery of the product itself. They are building into those kind of immersive beauty routine. And as I said, fragrance allows that kind of layering and personalizations. And it's moving away from having just one signature fragrance, for example. You're going to build into, actually, I'm talking about fragrance wardrobe, but we're talking about beauty wardrobe as well. So this generation is, as we mentioned before, looks for personalization, wants to be able to find products that they feel that will fit their mood, fill their occasions, and that fits into different scents, but also different textures, different way of wearing those kind of products. So fragrance and beauty products becomes a way of self-expression. Like I said, beauty wardrobe is becoming that next kind of way of beauty journey because of the layering impact, because of trying to create a complete kind of sensory identity. Pretty much they're looking at curating their beauty journey, pretty much like you are curating your Spotify music playlist. They're doing exactly the same to their products. So I think there are many different segments that have completely shifted for sure in terms of how we build the product journey, how we consider all these elements throughout, as mentioned, individuality, personalization, but also how we're going to offer a full rotation of, let's say, beauty wardrobes moving forward.
These expectations are not only changing products and purchasing habits, they are also reshaping the wider beauty market. Gen Z consumers expect brands to demonstrate transparency across product communication and business practices. They are particularly alert to misleading claims, inauthentic sustainability messaging, and commercial relationships that are not clearly disclosed. Mallory, how can brands communicate complex products and sustainable information clearly without overwhelming this audience?
Of course, Gen Z is they're like the little detectives. They want to not only flip the product immediately over and see what it's made out of, but then they want to go on TikTok and see what the real-time reviews of it are for. And then they also want to look into the brand and see what the brand is doing. Does the brand align with my ethics? Is the brand sustainable? Is the brand doing the things that I want a brand in this modern era to do so that I can align myself with them? So I think in that case, transparency between consumer and brand is very important. Also, of course, authenticity and honesty is really important for brands to resonate with Gen Z. I think that this is a generation that is very unforgiving of dishonesty. It's something that they have a keen radar for. They will find out if a brand is not signaling authentically, if they're not doing what they say they're doing, be it sustainability or social initiatives. They will find out very quickly, and they don't have a lot of patience for that because this is a generation that lives in a state of constant perm anxiety. We know that Gen Z is very anxious about the state of the world, about the state of the climate. And so the patience is very low for what they perceive to be inauthentic and non-transparency. Also remember that this is a generation that has grown up as digital natives. And so their perception of moving throughout new regulations in terms of what you're allowed to say with marketing and marketing a product is a little bit different than previous generations, just because they've been exposed to such overwhelming digital marketing from a very young age. So I think that definitely authenticity, transparency are key, and also just integrity. Integrity is something that I think is a word that Gen Z would align with. It's something that they strive for themselves, and also, authenticity and that idea of not claiming to be something that you're not is something that's very key to the Gen Z mindset. When I think of regulations and marketing, my mind immediately goes to, how Gen Z is going to shape in the coming years what is allowed to be said about product claims, what kind of marketing hyperbole will be tolerated legally. We've already seen crackdowns in other countries about product claims, especially recently in Korea. And so it'll be interesting to see how Gen Z shapes that conversation moving forward.
And thinking about the detective generation, Florence, how are regulatory challenges affecting the way products for Gen Z consumers are developed, tested, and marketed?
It is one of the hardest part because, as it was said, you need to be trusted. So you want to make sure, but the challenge is offering the full transparency and all the information related to the regulation is the speed to market that at the moment is, I would say, one of the main challenge. There's lots of trends, there's lots of products out there, lots of brands, and they're all facing the same challenge is moving at pace and making sure that they're going to deliver with that speed, which makes it from a regulatory point of view and evidence-built point of view, it's a bit of a challenge because realistically, developing products and developing evidence to back up any formulation efficiency takes time. And it's only with building data and evidence that you bring trust and credibility. So I would say that right now, one of the key challenge is that speed, the fact that it's the challenge of bringing all of it together. But I would agree with what has been said so far. You have to deliver trustworthy information. You have to be transparent. You have to give all the right information ahead and be honest about what can be done and what can't be done for the reason. They will find out. And this is the last thing that needs to happen, is to find out that something wasn't right, because then the trust is gone and it's just out. So it's always part of the NPD journey that we need to make sure that we have all the right evidence to back up any claims, whether it's sustainability, whether it's product performance, and sometimes just take the right amount of time, despite the need of that speed to market, of course, to make sure that these are right and these are in place, because that's how the brands will build up their credibility with this generation and will have the trust within the product and the consumers. So it's a tricky journey just because of the speed element that makes things slightly more complicated from a product development. Accelerating product is one thing, but accelerating wisely and the right way is another thing. So I think we're putting all the elements together to make sure it happens for sure. And I think it's something you don't cut corners. The due diligence has to be done, and anything in product development from packaging to formulation needs to be fully backed by the right evidence and the right testing.
Good advice. And finally, I would like both of you to look ahead. Mallory, what are the top 3 predictions for the future of Gen Z beauty consumers?
My 3 predictions for the Gen Z beauty consumer, I would say my first one would be growth. That would be my first word, because of course the market is responding to Gen Z, and Gen Z's preferences for their beauty journey is changing as they mature. And so as Gen Z continues to grow up and enter their 30s, and enter their mid to late 20s, this generation is going to look for, try and find their path as they come of age more. So I think perhaps there might be a resurgence of millennial products. We know that Gen Z loves a lot of millennial aesthetics, like the Y2K movement. There are a lot in the 90s. There are a lot of idealized, nostalgic aesthetics. And so it'll be interesting to see if any later eras start to become more popular, specifically within beauty routines, and what products make a comeback. We've seen things like Clinique's Black Honey, for example, go viral because of kind of this nostalgic resurgence. Also, in terms of speaking to my previous answer about marketing claims and regulations, as Gen Z starts to look for more serious preventative aging products, it'll be interesting to see what they demand of brands going forward in terms of age-positive representation and marketing claims. So growth is the first one. I think the second one is definitely expression. I think we're continuing to see this long backlash to this clean girl aesthetic that was so prevalent about 4 or 5 years ago. We're seeing a real need for maximalism among Gen Z on experimentation and expression. So I think, again, kind of goes with the idea of growth and growing up and maturing and coming into your own as an adult. But along with that has to do with finding, the beauty products and aesthetic that work for you. And so I think that this generation is going to continue to express themselves and look for creativity of their own personal aesthetic and their beauty routines. And then the last word that comes to mind is advocacy. This is a generation that's very interested in social justice and advocating for what they believe is right and calling out injustice wherever they see it, no matter what the scale is, whether this is calling out a brand for making sustainability claims, or whether it's asking a brand to offer more shade ranges or asking a brand to create a product to suit a need that hasn't been met. I think Gen Z is great because they shine lights on those kind of dark corners that had been forgotten. So I think through their advocacy and through their championing of solutions for all, I think that it will really force the beauty industry to grow in ways that will benefit everyone.
And Florence, what are your top 3 predictions for product and innovation that will define the next phase of Gen Z beauty?
For me, brands will need to continue to enable this generation to be informed and make choices in their beauty routine. So beauty products feel curated, personalized for sure. Beauty products that will become more modular. It's all about having that flexibility around their beauty products and the curation about those beauty collection. As I've mentioned before, we love having curated playlists or fashion wardrobes. So it's the same thing for those curated beauty wardrobes. So I think giving the offer and the flexibility there, almost like enabling this co-creation, it's that kind of empowerment. I also think that AI tools that assist still with a human-led element of it, but that help with the personalization of discovery, helps with simplify navigation into buying into products and product routines, whatever categories they are, but keeping that emotional connection. I still think there is this feeling and this mood and individuality that you will take from that emotional connection to those brands. So it's finding the right balance in addition to everything else that Mallory just said, having the right product efficiency, having the right package, everything that they are demanding on. But it's really having that connection and enabling them, keeping that connection and almost tapping into this kind of co-creation. So they're giving a choice basically, and it enables them to have that influence within the brand. Yeah, I think strong on personalization, rotating, and beauty wardrobe. I think it's more about giving that identity and enable the consumer to express their own identity.
And with that, we'll wrap up today's episode of Predictive, Protective, Planet Positive Cosmetics for Gen Z. A huge thank to Mallory and Florence for sharing their insight and to you for listening. As we've heard today, Gen Z consumers are doing far more than influencing the latest beauty trends. They are changing how products are discovered and developed, how efficacy is demonstrated, how recommendations are shared, and how brands build trust. For manufacturers, brands, and retailers, success will depend on offering genuine value without compromising performance, supporting innovations with credible evidence, and demonstrating brand value while with meaningful action. Meeting these expectations will present challenges for the beauty industry, but it also creates opportunities for businesses willing to listen, adapt, and build genuine connections. We'll be back next month with more conversations exploring the forces shaping the future of the global cosmetics and personal care industry. Until then, take care, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode.